Welcome to CORELIGHT'S Spiritual Weather Report. It's May 22nd of 2022, and this is Brad Laughlin, and I'm here in the United States, and my beloved Leslie, who many of you know, of course, is in South Africa. And I'd like to welcome all of you who are new to CORELIGHT, and also welcome to all of our longtime CORELIGHT friends who are with us today. And when I say that, I mean also anybody who's listening in the future. There is no time and space at this level that we're operating in, so it doesn't matter if you're listening in the future or you're here in present time. We're all together in the field of love. So welcome, everybody, past, present, future. And wow, the intensity is continuing, isn't it? Big surprise. I know that I say this every month, and the acceleration of the energies and the intensity just keep on growing, don't they? I mean, this has been going on for many years, but it does continue. And it reminds me so much of that metaphor. Leslie used to talk about this long ago, but it's the metaphor of the clay on the potter's wheel. And when the potter's wheel is turning very slowly, it doesn't matter if the clay is a little out of balance, and the potter can work with the clay as it spins around. But then as the acceleration builds and the table starts to spin faster and faster, the potter has to get the clay more perfectly centered, or else it goes into a speed wobble and it messes it up. And eventually, if it goes fast enough and it's imbalanced enough, it'll fly off the wheel and hit the wall. And so I feel like it's such a great metaphor for where we are right now, because we're being asked to align and to be impeccable with our energy, and that is the equivalent of being in balance on the potter's wheel. And if the wheel's spinning very, very fast and it's in perfect alignment, it looks like it's not even moving. It looks like the clay pot is just perfectly symmetrical, perfectly balanced. And that's the metaphor for us. If we're working on ourselves, if we know how to use energy, then we're like that balanced pot. We can use it to perfect our consciousness. We can use it to get into greater balance. And the faster it goes, the more opportunity we have, and also the more challenging it is. So anyway, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It seems like sure like me, we're being called to ever greater impeccability, ever greater balance, and ever greater witnessing in using this time of acceleration to ascend in consciousness. As a friend of mine says, it's an ascension accelerator, the time we're in right now. So I was meditating on what to talk about this month, and some of the themes that came up, it started with, I was aware that a lot of people are feeling stuck in negativity and despair. And so I thought we'd talk about that, about why that's happening, especially now, and also how to get out of it, and what that will include, focusing on creating what you want to create. One way of managing this time is creating what you want to create. So we'll focus on that. Clearing unfairness and injustice is another big theme right now. Clearing unfairness and injustice. Another one is focusing on our relationship with our parents and practicing love for our parents, or at least taking the next step in healing our relationship with our parents. And it doesn't matter if your parents are alive or not, because they're still inside us. If we have time, I'd also like to talk about practicing gratitude for the natural world. That's been really big lately, so I'm hoping we have time to get to that today. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, I don't know, but the rising power of the feminine is also up right now. So those are our themes for this time. And just quickly before we start, for everybody who might be new to these calls, I know every month we get new people. So I start these calls by offering a guided meditation, and then I'll speak about the prevailing energies that are affecting us, and also about the spiritual principles that are most helpful for us right now. And then at the end, we have time for questions and answers, and we close our session with either a prayer or a brief guided meditation or some kind of exercise or whatever we have time for. And if you need to leave before the call ends, it's okay. You can always listen to the recording later. We send out the link to our email list, and it's also posted on YouTube. So just before our guided meditation, just a few quick announcements I wanted to share with you. We're super excited about our new learning management system that we're in the process of building online. For those of you who know, it's called an LMS, Learning Management System, an LMS for short. And it's the online platform that we'll be using to offer all of our courses from now on. And installing the software has just been a very steep learning curve for the tech team, and we're working hard on it. And it's taking us a little longer than we thought, but it's really beautiful, and it's elegant, and it's very simple to use. And it's going to give everybody the best experience of the CoreLight work possible. The program's called Kajabi, and it's the same LMS that a course producer used last year for the course that I taught with my friend Anna Breitenbach, which we called For the Love of Animals. So if you took that course, you know how it was presented, and it had a very streamlined, impeccable, beautiful quality, and we were really happy with it, and we were proud of how the course came out, how it was presented, and we got a lot of positive feedback about it. So that made me realize that we really needed to get Kajabi for CoreLight too, so that we can present Leslie's courses and my courses in a similar way. So the first course that I'm going to be offering on our new LMS will be Spiritual Warrior Training. And I know many of you have already taken that course, but if you're new, you haven't. And we're planning for it to begin sometime between August and October, and it'll be about 5 weeks. And we'll keep you posted on the details, but it's going to include new material that nobody's ever seen before, including some archival video footage of Leslie that I discovered by accident. And I'll also be offering some live Zoom calls throughout that course as well. And then after that, we plan to roll out all of our other courses after that one. So we'll be keeping you posted on all that. But meanwhile, if you're interested, you can read about those courses on our website on the courses page at corelight.org. So please stay tuned, and there'll be more coming on all of that. So let's begin with our guided meditation. I invite you now to take some long, slow, deep breaths and just get comfortable, get quiet, close your eyes, relax. Of course, not if you're driving. And let's just all slow down. I know life gets so busy. And I know that we need to multitask very often when we participate in calls like this, but this is time to just stop and just be and breathe. Breathing in all the light and the life force that surrounds you. Breathing out any tension that you feel in your body. Breathing in peace and relaxation. Breathing out stress. Breathing in the present moment. Breathing out any worries about the past or the future. As you breathe, just relax with each exhale. And just go yin. Yin being the feminine principle, the receptive, passive principle. And just receive. Receive this beautiful energy and peace that's coming in. And as you probably know, at some level of her being, Leslie is overlighting these calls, and there's a transmission of healing energy that comes through from another level. And I would say that even though we do a lot of talking on these calls, by far the most important thing is the energy. And the more we can relax and let go, the more we receive that transmission of peace and unconditional love, even while we're talking. So I invite you to be meditative throughout the whole call, even when we're talking. And again, it doesn't matter if you're live with us today or listening to a recording. We're all part of this field and we're all connected, because time and space don't really exist except in the third dimension. So I invite you right now to deeply relax and tune in to these other levels of reality. Beyond time and space, where we're all connected. Connected in the heart, in love, in this field of unity consciousness that surrounds us. It doesn't matter if you feel the transmission coming in or not, it's still happening. So you can just relax. There's nothing you need to do. Nobody's doing anything to you. It's just a field of love and healing energy. And if you just allow it, you can receive it in a very natural way. It just naturally happens if you set the intention that you'd like to receive it. So as you breathe, let's do a muscular relaxation from head to toes, and I invite you to visualize and feel a warm liquid pouring over the top of your head like honey, a thick liquid, viscous, relaxing all the muscles that it touches. So feel your scalp relaxing completely and feel it pouring over your whole head, relaxing all the muscles of your face, the back of your head, all the way down your eyes and nose and cheeks and mouth. Just relaxing all of those muscles, the jaw, the back of the tongue, the back of the head, the neck and shoulders. Just feel this warm honey pouring over you. And remember your breathing, long, slow, and deep. Feel the honey pouring over your arms all the way down to your hands and fingertips, relaxing all those muscles. Feel it pouring over your chest and your back, all the way down over your diaphragm and your abdomen, your lower back. Just feeling a very deep relaxation as you breathe. Feel it pouring over your pelvis, the hip flexors especially, those psoas muscles that run down the right and left side, front of your hips, and the buttocks, and genitals. Just letting go. Feeling the honey continuing to pour down your legs, relaxing the upper legs, the knees, the lower legs, ankles, feet, and toes. Just feel the energy sweeping your whole body clear. And feel all the muscles completely relaxing and letting go. And I'll be quiet now for a few moments while we all scan our bodies again from head to toes. Just breathing light and relaxation into any place where you still feel you're holding on to tension. Breathing out the tension. So now I invite you to put your attention on the core of your body. In Sanskrit, it's called the Sushumna. In English, we call it the core. And if you're new, it runs from the top of the head all the way down to the perineum, to the root chakra, the base of the spine. It's like a luminous white tube that runs down through the center of the body, right in front of the spine. So let's all just hold our attention on that core energy for a few moments. Feel, visualize it lighting up. You can see it as a golden white light or pure, brilliant white light, silver white, just whatever you feel. But it is a brilliant, luminous core. And so see it in your mind's eye, feel it in your body. And then let's bring our attention down to the base of the Sushumna, the base of the core, which is the root chakra. And let's just put our attention there gently for a few moments. And just by gently putting your awareness there, the root chakra naturally opens. And let's drop our grounding cords down into the center of the earth, connecting with the core of the earth. So you can feel very anchored, very grounded with this exercise. You can feel gravity gently pulling you towards the earth. And feel yourself supported in the form of the floor and the chair. And just relax and let go. Remembering your breathing. Just letting go like a little baby into the arms of its mother. Completely letting go and relaxing into the embrace of Mother Earth. And then let's draw that energy back up into the body through the soles of the feet. And bring that earth energy up into the body, right back up into the core. Feel that earth energy commingling with the energy of your body and the core of your body. Helps us to feel grounded, centered, balanced. And now let's put our attention up at the top of the core, the top of the head, which is the crown chakra. And if you're new, the crown chakra is also called the 1,000-petaled lotus, which sits on the top of the head like a crown that a king or a queen would wear. And just let's feel that flower opening up petal by petal on the top of our head. And feel a beautiful, gentle, golden white light raining down from above, filling you up, filling up your crown, filling up your body, filling up your aura. Just relaxing. There's nothing to do. This is not a doing. This is just the letting go and a being. And this flow of energy naturally just happens. I'm just giving words to it. So just allow yourself to fill up with light. This gentle golden white light that's raining down from above. Celestial energy. I invite you now to put your energy right in the center of your head. It's a place known as the cave of Brahman, Brahman being one of the names of God. And if you're not familiar with it, the way that you find it is you draw an invisible line from between your eyebrows, right in the center of your forehead there, directly back into your head. And then you draw another invisible line between your ears. And where those two lines intersect is the center of your head. And the center of the head is known as the cave of Brahman. It's an ancient mystical practice to find that place and put your attention there. It's where the pineal, pituitary, and hypothalamus reside. And you might feel when you find it, because if you can find that place and put your attention there, just very gently, this is not an efforting, but when you find it, you feel an energetic shift. And you feel an expansion of your consciousness. And thought stops. So this is just a being. This is not a doing. This is just a feeling, receiving kind of exercise. And it's okay if you can't feel these things. It does take some practice. And if you just set your intention that this is what you'd like to one day be able to feel this, it will happen. So if you're not feeling it, just set the intention that you'd like to feel it. But I can feel many people are finding the cave of Brahman, and it's a beautiful place. There's a profound energy when we're all in this state. It's an expansion of the field of love, the field of unity consciousness. And that field surrounds us all the time. It's just that we're often not aware of it. We don't make it conscious. So this is a great exercise, a great opportunity while we're gathering together to stop and feel it. It is growing and it is beautiful. Just breathing, just relaxing, just letting go. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Just give yourself this precious moment. To be with yourself. Connect with Spirit. And to connect with each other. We are a worldwide community. There are usually several hundred people who participate in these calls worldwide. Not all together at the same time. Some in the future listening to the recording, but we all participate in this field. So we can feel each other in this unity through the cave of Brahman and also through the core. Interesting that we feel the core is our core, it's my individual core, but the truth is there's only one core. And that's not a metaphor, that is the truth. It feels like we're all separate, but we all share the same core. We all are source energy at our essence. And this exercise gives us the opportunity to tap into that. So I invite you to just sit with this, just feel, just continue to just be with this and feel the energy and receive the transmission. And I'll say a prayer and an invocation for our call today. And again, it doesn't matter. Don't beat yourself up if you're not feeling this. Just relax and just enjoy the peace and quiet. And just know that whether you feel it or not, the energy is coming in and you are receiving it. We call on Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, the Self that we all are. We call on all the highest guides and teachers and beings who surround us in the highest love and support. We invite you into our sacred circle today, and we ask that you please surround us in a beautiful cocoon of golden white light and love and healing energy. Please guide our conversation into the highest love and the highest wisdom. And fill us up and hold our hands so that we may walk into the world, into our soul's highest purpose, and share our light with others. And we give thanks, knowing that this is so. We give thanks for this opportunity to be together today, to share our love, to connect in the field of unity. And before we close, I invite everyone now to send this field of love that we're holding, this light, this energy that we're holding, send it out to the whole world, see it encompassing the whole planet, so that our earth is surrounded by this field of love and light that we're holding. And our prayer is that peace and love and joy come to our planet, and that all life forms may know this energy, that all beings who suffer from war, poverty, hunger, illness, loss, pain of any kind, we ask that love and light and healing energy be sent to them, to all humans and the rest of the natural world. And we give thanks, knowing that this is so. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alalaho. Oh. And so I invite you to just stay in this state. And I know some of you have to multitask and to do things, but if you can just stay meditative and just be, that's best. Even during the talking. But thank you for that. Thank you for sharing in that beautiful field. So I wanted to start with a quote for today. Here it is. The very culture that we live in denies that there's truth. It makes people hungry, hurts people, leaves them isolated, therefore empty, therefore wanting satisfaction from the outside, therefore addicted. And then it creates all these products and all these activities and all these cultural diversions to fill the very emptiness that it creates. And then they say that selfishness is the true nature of human beings. And there's the complete circle of the ideology. And that's by Gabor Mate, who's a wonderful healer and teacher, an author who talks about trauma healing. Anyway, I like that. So the first theme that I wanted to talk with you about is creating what you want to create. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, I heard from quite a few people lately who say that they feel like giving up. And it's easy nowadays to get sucked into the despair and the negativity and not to trust that there's a higher plan at work. But, you know, it's so important to remember that that's the reason it's happening is because the light is pouring in so intensely right now, and because Earth's vibration is increasing so much. So the dark and the light are in very high contrast and at their extremes. And so the messages that we're receiving about the darkness are very intense, and it's all very believable. And if you focus on that, if you focus especially on the news media, you get really absorbed in that energy, and it's easily, it sends us easily into despair. But I would say that it's equally as important to tune into the light. And the dark and the light are in such high contrast that it's really important that we remember why we incarnated. We came in at this time to help transmute the darkness into the light. And we're especially focusing on transmuting fear into love and fear into joy, and transmuting the despair and the hopelessness that we might be feeling into freedom. And so it's really important to remember that it's our destiny to evolve into these higher vibratory levels. We're not devolving, even though I know it may not look good much of the time, and things are likely to get worse before they get better. But so much of this is really a matter of where we put our attention and what we focus on. The darkness is being highlighted so that we can really see it clearly, right? And so that we can know it well, and we can learn everything we need to learn from it. And by doing that, we can make the changes that we need to make, and we can move into that higher level of consciousness. And that's, I'm talking about both personally and collectively as well, a global collective. So for example, we see this process throughout history. The population of a country has to get pushed to its limits before they stand up and they say no to what's right. And in our personal process, as an individual, we'll play out a similar scenario over and over and over. Like, for example, with our relationships or our jobs or what have you, until we're able to say no to whatever it is that isn't working. And then we make the change that we need to make. And so one of the action steps that we can all take right now, especially if you're feeling despair or if you're feeling trapped in some way, and you're feeling overwhelmed by all the negativity, first, it's to say no to what you feel isn't right. But it's also really important to focus on creating whatever it is you want to create. So you start to do the things that you want to do to make the world a better place. And you follow your heart, and you build things that you want to build that make you happy, because if you're following your heart and you're living in joy, then that's a very high vibration. And that's going to be the greatest gift for the earth as well, because living in a high vibration is the highest service that anybody can offer. And so, as I often say on these calls, it's so much about joy. It's about holding that vibration of joy, which is the highest manifestation of the spiritual journey. And so by creating the things we want to create, we're also not having to fight against all the things that we see going wrong in the world. We just start creating what we came here to create, and we midwife the new paradigm of the heart in our own individual way. And I know that this may not be true for everybody. Some people may have incarnated to be on the front lines, so to speak, and, fight the good fight against the injustices that we see in the world. And that's perfect if that's you. It's up to everybody to choose for themselves what you feel is yours to do. And everybody has their highest path. And, for most of us, I think it's a little of both. There may be times where you feel called to march in the streets or, take some kind of action to say, this is not okay. And I know I've attended plenty of rallies in my days, to stand up and say no to what's not right. And yet for me now, I feel like it's more productive this is just for me, not to be against something, but instead to find the things that I'm for and to do the things that I know bring light and love into the world instead of fighting against something. So I know there are plenty of issues to march in the streets about. So I just want to be clear that I'm not, what I'm not saying is that that's not important if you feel moved to do that. Sometimes that's the best way to stand up and say no and to express anger. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that. And in fact, like I've said many times on these calls, there's plenty to be angry about nowadays. And it's, if we're not feeling angry from time to time about what's happening in the world, there's probably something wrong with us. So let's shift gears. I also wanted to talk a little bit about unfairness. This segues into clearing unfairness and injustice. And I know for myself, ever since I was a small child, my trigger has always been injustice and unfairness. And if something seemed unfair, it always triggered me. And I've really had to process that one a lot over many years. And one of the things that helped me the most was recognizing that this is a part of the experience of living on this planet, that part of our lesson here in Schoolroom Earth is that it's not a fair planet. And there are plenty of things that are not fair in this world, and that's how it's meant to be. That's the experience that we incarnated for. We came here to experience unfairness and to learn everything that there is to learn about that and to grow from it and how to, learn how to deal with it and how we respond to it and how we feel about it and, and so forth. And at least that's for now. And as we move into the new paradigm of the heart, there's less and less of that. And eventually, we transcend it altogether. But for right now, clearly, it doesn't take much to see that unfairness and injustice are just part of life. So I want to be clear that does not mean that we just accept it. That's not what I'm saying. It's not like, we don't just become a doormat and just allow injustice to run roughshod all over us and all over the world without reacting to it or doing something about it. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a certain empowerment that happens when we recognize that unfairness is an experience we came here to learn about. And I feel like that's when we really start to have more of a witness kicking into it. And we start to see it with new eyes and with some spiritual detachment. And that's when we can start to learn. We start to learn the lessons around unfairness that we came here to master. It has a lot to do with the victim, tyrant, savior consciousness. And that's really the main shadow process that the whole world is here to learn about. And I speak about that a lot on these calls. But it's a very important reminder for all of us. The victim, tyrant, savior consciousness is the number one process on planet Earth. And when enough of us clear that shadow process, even to a small degree, that's when we'll really start to see the new paradigm of the heart manifesting in a bigger way. So the scope of that victim, tyrant, savior topic is way beyond what we have time for on our call today. But I think we'll be touching on it kind of throughout the call because many of the themes that are up for us are tied to that and tied to the process of unfairness. And just as an aside, in case you're new, I taught a course on the subject of victim, tyrant, savior consciousness a couple of years ago. And it's going to be one of the courses that we offer when our new learning management system is up and running. It was called The New Paradigm of the Heart, Transcending Victim Tyrant Consciousness. And also, if you're brand new to this work and you don't even know what that is, I did write about it in my book, which is called Living with Enlightenment, A Journey of Love. So if you want to know more about it, you can learn more about it there. And it's in the last couple of chapters in my book. So the book's available on our website at CORELIGHT.org and Amazon and any bookseller. So basically, it's a dynamic in our world that almost all of us play out every day. In fact, I'm sure all of us do play it out every day. And if we weren't, we'd be enlightened and we wouldn't be here. It's like the water that the fish swims in. We don't even know we're doing it because it's so ingrained in our egoic structure, and it's just how we operate as humans. So even really advanced spiritual seekers usually have some degree of that victim, tyrant, savior consciousness going on. And I know many of you participating in these monthly spiritual weather report gatherings have been around CORELIGHT for a really long time, and many of us decades. But no matter how long or short that we've been on a conscious spiritual path, I would think that every one of us listening to this call can relate to this. I don't think it takes much to see that's what all the dramas of the world are about. Victims, tyrants, and saviors, and add in rebels and martyrs. And I think, especially lately, as the intensity of the light coming into the planet builds, and as the darkness gets highlighted more and more, we're all getting to take a closer look at all the places where we get our buttons pushed around unfairness and injustice and this victim, tyrant, savior dynamic. And it's impossible to escape right now, isn't it? And again, I mean, I don't mean to make light of it. I know it's really hard for some people, but, it's perfect in its way because it's giving us a chance to process ourselves and to clear and transmute all of those shadow aspects of us that are still unconscious. So, I mean, it's perfect, but of course it's not perfect at all. The unfairness is just awful. It's like, it just feels terrible. It's definitely not okay. And there are plenty of things that we want to change in the world. And we need to stand up and say no to those things. But if you're on a conscious spiritual path, the main focus needs to be on what's happening inside. How are we reacting to what's happening in the world? Are we unconsciously playing out old emotional patterns? Are we reacting from unconsciousness? Is our childhood conditioning and our wounding getting triggered by what's happening in the world? So that's the place really that we need to focus our attention right now. And it's an incredible opportunity for spiritual growth. And it's so important to bring a witness to all of this and to remember that we have a choice, We have a choice in how we can respond to all of these unfair events that are happening in the world. And we may not be able to control the events, but we definitely have control over our reaction to them, or at least that's where we're headed. We have control over attitudes, over our beliefs, over how we respond to life. And so that's where the gold is. It's about practicing witnessing, and it's about practicing self-inquiry and doing that inner processing work on any places in us that might be getting triggered right now. And there's plenty to get triggered about. So if you might be listening for the first time today and you're not understanding what I'm talking about, my life partner, Leslie, and I wrote a book called The Marriage of Spirit, which describes all of this in detail. So if it interests you, you can learn more about witnessing and practicing self-inquiry and processing work and so forth by reading the Marriage of Spirit book. And as I said, it's on our website at CORELIGHT.org. All of our books are there, or Amazon or any bookseller. So just, again, with witnessing, I want to just be clear, it doesn't mean that we don't have emotions. And I know that's a common misconception, even for people who've been on a path for a long time. So even with witnessing, or especially with witnessing, we feel the anger, or we feel, whatever the emotion is. But we also remember that that's not who we are. We're not the emotion. We're not the anger. We are the pure awareness. The emotions are passing through us. And I know another big misconception is that a lot of people think that enlightenment means that you don't have emotions anymore and that you're somehow kind of immune or something from feeling. And gosh, I watched that play out with Leslie so many times where people thought that. Anyway, it's definitely not true. The awakening process is not about not feeling or about getting rid of emotions. It's about being able to feel everything and still remembering who you are, which is love, which is awareness, which is consciousness. And when you have even a small degree of spiritual detachment, you start to experience life becoming so much easier because it doesn't seem so real. And the painful experiences don't overwhelm us so much because some part of us, that witness part of us, that observer part of us that knows that the pain and the emotions are not who we are. We experience them and they pass through us and we don't go unconscious. And we don't suffer in that process. So we allow those emotions, we feel them and we let them go and there's no suffering. And it's that witnessing part of us that remembers that this too shall pass, and we don't get lost in the emotion, and we never forget who we are. So before we move on, I guess if you feel called to take this process a step further, I thought maybe a good square that we could all do between now and the next call is on unfairness. Or you could substitute injustice for unfairness if you like. Either one, unfairness or injustice. And again, if you're brand new to this and you don't know what a square is, it's a simple journaling technique for clearing the shadow, and we describe it in the Marriage of Spirit book. And the best way to learn is just to do one. So I thought maybe really just quickly, let's just walk through the four corners of this square now, so that if you want to do it, you can just do it on your own later. And so the first question then is, what's the opposite of unfairness or injustice for you? And I think it's a pretty simple one. It's pretty easy to see that the opposite is fairness or justice. So let's just, for the sake of our example, let's just use fairness, unfairness, and fairness. So the four corners would be the desire for fairness, the fear of fairness, desire for unfairness, the fear of unfairness. So I think the easy corners for most people will be the desire for fairness and the fear of unfairness. Those are pretty obvious, I think. But the more challenging ones would be the fear of fairness and the desire for unfairness. And that's where it's important to remember that we all have everything inside of us. Because it's tempting to think, well, I don't fear fairness, and I certainly don't desire unfairness, right? I mean, who wants that? Who wants unfairness? But this is where, if we dig a little deeper and we get really honest with ourselves, there are sometimes shadow places in us, small places, that might be hooked into the victim, tyrant, savior dynamic. And usually these really unconscious corners of a square are somehow associated with victim consciousness. So there might be an unconscious part of us that somehow gets something out of the fight between victim and tyrant, or who somehow gets off on feeling victimized and then getting rescued by somebody, a savior of some kind. And so this is the key. If we look deeply enough, we usually find that there's a payoff of some kind with each of the corners, and it tends to be buried in the unconscious. And so it's something to take a look at and do a little self-inquiry practice on. So you can journal about those four corners and what the payoff is for you for each corner. And if you're looking inwardly and you still don't see anything for those unconscious corners, then you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes to try to discover why somebody else might desire or fear those corners. So, for example, you'd look at why would a tyrant desire unfairness? And then you'd write about that. Like, for example, Hitler. or pick your favorite tyrant. There's plenty of those to choose from nowadays. And then you ask yourself, well, why would that person desire unfairness? What's the payoff for that person? And, very often that's a real aha moment when we can put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, like a tyrant, for example, and we learn what it's all about for them. And I'm not saying we want to embody that. I'm just saying this is just a mapping out of the egoic structure. That's all we're doing. We're just mapping out the ego and putting it down on paper to show spirit that we're clear on how this dynamic works. And so then when you're done, you make an offering of the square and you give all those imbalances and the unconscious aspects back to spirit in a prayer, and you release them and you ask for support in finding inner peace and balance in your life. And really the squares are all about making the unconscious conscious. That's the point of them. And in fact, I would say that's really the whole spiritual journey. As we do that, as we make the unconscious conscious, we become more whole and we discover who we truly are. And it's also how we develop a stronger witness. And so that's a positive feedback loop. The more we witness, the more we see who we truly are. And the more we learn who we are by doing the processing, the stronger the witness gets. The more and more we feel freer, and we have more inner peace, and we experience ourselves as the loving beings that we truly are. Okay, so let's shift gears. When I tuned into the energy for today, I got a clear sense of needing to talk about our relationship with our parents and focusing on our love for our parents. And if you had a more challenging relationship with your parents, then it might be, at the very least, taking the next step in the journey of healing your relationship with your parents. I'm just going to take a sip of water real quick. Hold on. Thank you. So a couple of weeks ago, it was Mother's Day in many countries, and a few weeks from now, it's going to be Father's Day. So I think that might be part of why this issue is coming up. We're in the midst of a time when we're being invited to honor them, and to show our gratitude for them. And I know sometimes that's really hard for some of us if the relationship was difficult. And even if you had a good relationship with your parents in general, when you start on this conscious spiritual path, you sometimes uncover some of the more challenging experiences with your parents and some of the more challenging imprinting that you received from them that got suppressed into the unconscious. And as I said, it doesn't matter if your parents are still alive or not, and it also doesn't matter if you were raised by somebody other than your parents, because we're imprinted by our biological parents and by whoever raised us. And so we carry around that egoic pattern that we got from those people, and their patterns become our patterns, and their wounds become our wounds. Their traumas become our traumas. even if we're unconscious of it. And it includes our physical body, the biology that we got from our biological parents. So our biological parents and the people who raised us, they all contribute to this egoic imprinting that we think is who we are, until we start to wake up. We start to wake up to the fact that that's not really who we are. And that's when we start to realize that we're not the ego and we're not the body, but we're these vast, eternal, timeless beings. But until we start to become conscious of that, who we truly are, and until we start to do the work of clearing the ego, we're busy. We're living life as some version of our parents, essentially. And, whether we whether we like it or not, we're like little mini me's. Our egos are like little mini versions of our parents. That makes a lot of people uncomfortable to see that and to know that. And for a lot of people, we may try not to be like our parents, but without some kind of therapy or, tools for making the unconscious patterns conscious, we still end up being like our parents. And it's funny, I always remember this friend of mine who told me once that when she was a teenager, she was so angry with her mother. She was always rebelling against her mother. And she said one day when she was especially angry with her mother, she made this very strong commitment to the universe. And she was in a rage and she screamed, "I will never, ever be like my mother." I met her when she was, I think, in her 40s, maybe 50s. And for most of her adult life, she'd forgotten that she made that commitment as a teenager. But when she started the spiritual path and she started doing the egoic clearing work, and unpacking some of those shadow aspects that had been suppressed into the unconscious, she remembered that incident. And she saw what power it had, even though it was unconscious, and she had remembered it, and she saw that it shaped her whole life. And she was so upset about finding out, because she told me she was beginning to realize that she was exactly like her mother in so many ways. And I'm laughing because I know I can relate to that, and I bet you everybody, maybe almost everybody on the call can relate to this. And so the spiritual principle behind that is that if we try to rebel in anger and be different from our parents, we're still tied to them. And first of all, just by the nature of comparing ourselves to a pattern that we don't want to be like, we're automatically bound to it, even though we don't want it. It's like we're always bouncing off that thing, that very thing that we're comparing ourselves to. So that's the nature of the rebel program, right? It needs a tyrant to rebel against. The tyrant and the rebel are tied together like two sides of the same coin. They have to have each other to exist. So, secondly, we're also bound to them because our parents, because we have their egoic pattern imprinted into us, and it'll remain that way until we start to do the egoic clearing work. And it doesn't work to just suppress it into the unconscious, because you know what that's like. That's like sweeping dirt under a rug. And it's still going to be there, and it's still going to affect us in all kinds of hidden ways. It's like that metaphor of trying to shove a beach ball under the water, and what does it do? When you push it down, it resists, right? And it pushes back. And so we try to keep it under, but one day if we lose our grip, it pops up out of the water, and it surprises us and it hits us in the face, because some part of us was pretending it wasn't there. So if you're new to this, doing the egoic clearing work, and especially focusing on the imprinting that your parents gave you, that's one of the most important and empowering and really critical things that you can do on the journey of awakening. And if you've been around a while, and I know so many of you have, I know that you know what I'm talking about. Leslie taught about that principle for 25 years, and she gave us so many powerful tools to help with the clearing work. But I think even for all of us who've been doing this work for a long time, we're being given a new opportunity right now. It's an amazing time right now with this intensity. We're being offered an opportunity to take another step and do a little more unpacking of that egoic imprinting that our parents gave us. We're being invited into a whole new level of our awakening. So it's a great time to take another good look in the mirror and to ask ourselves if we're still holding on to any grudges around our parents, or if you still have any kind of grumpiness about them, or if you still have any expectations of them or anything like that. So I wonder, when was the last time you asked inwardly about that? If you haven't in a while, now's a good time. This is a great exercise for all of us to do between now and next month's call. So the exercise would be literally to look in the mirror or, sit in meditation and close your eyes and ask yourself, is there any place inside me where I haven't completely forgiven my parents? Is there anything that I feel for them except unconditional love? And as I said, it's about looking at those places where we might still have grudges or expectations of them, unfulfilled desires, any kind of feeling of dissatisfaction or anything like that. And if you find those things inside you, then you can start to journal about them and do some processing work on them until you find your next level of forgiveness and love for your parents. And like I said, we can all do this, even if they're no longer alive. It doesn't mean that we have to talk with them about any of it. They live inside us whether we like it or not. So we can do this without physically involving our parents. And I know this is easier said than done, but this is the critical work. This is one of the most important things we can do right now. If there's a part of us that's still blaming our parents for anything, then we're still holding on to the victim patterning and to the victim tyrant savior consciousness. And like we've been talking about for so long, that's the number one shadow process holding the whole planet back right now. It's preventing us from fully living in the heart. And that's both personally and collectively. And I mean, is any wonder that the world is in this process of moving through victim tyrant savior process, that the victim tyrant savior process, if we're still blaming our parents for anything, or if we're still holding some kind of grudge against our parents. It's not a surprise. So this is our work, and it really gets to the core of the whole awakening process. Making this unconscious stuff conscious and clearing it is the key to finding our hearts and to being able to completely live an open heart, or at least live there more and more and more. And that's the new paradigm. That is the new paradigm of the heart. As we live that more and more, as we live with an open heart increasingly, then we're one step closer to living with the permanently opened heart. And so just imagine what the world will be like when there are so many people living in that state. That's literally heaven on earth. And I think that's what we're moving towards, and we're moving there quickly. And the truth is, we don't have to wait for it. We can do it right now. We can just live that ourselves, and we can, even though the rest of the world's not in it, we can be in it. So you can have your life be fully functioning in the new paradigm of the heart just by opening your own heart. So I think it's tempting to put it all outside and say, well, it's still in the future. It's not coming. We have to wait for others. And that's not true. The truth of it is that we can do this ourselves. You can have it yourself today. You can live in it. Just keep your heart open. And I know that's easier said than done, but it's important to note that this is what it takes. Like, we need to do our own work so that we can live in the heart. And I want to say this. I don't mean for this to be something that you start judging yourself about. I mean, I know a lot of people carry a lot of baggage around parents. So please, if you find yourself starting to beat yourself up right now because of what I said and because you don't feel like you've made enough progress with, healing your parental imprint and finding love for your parents, it's really important to just let that go, because that is not going to help. And if that's what's happening for you, just very compassionately, just bring the witness in and just be okay with where you're at, and just know that all of us are on this trajectory somewhere. We can make the commitment to ourselves and to Spirit right now that we just want to take the next step on that journey. And that's enough. Just making that commitment to do it is enough. And I would add, while you're at it, you can also make the commitment to loving yourself more as well, especially if you found yourself in self-judgment just then. Loving yourself is just as important as loving your parents. So committing to both of those things is critical. And I also think we're going to close out on this soon, but I need to add this. What's comforting to know is that even though it took us however many decades to pack our suitcase, the egoic programming suitcase, maybe 2 decades, 3 decades, 4, however many, it doesn't take nearly that long to unpack it. You can unpack it pretty quickly, actually, especially nowadays because things are moving so fast. So if we make the commitment to do the egoic clearing work, Spirit meets us more than halfway. And I remember Leslie's spiritual guides told her inwardly once that the acceleration of energy on our planet is so intense that what took her 10 years would take others 2. And that was like back in the 70s or the 80s. And I mean, look at how things have been accelerating. We can see the truth of that. And that's part of the grace that we're all experiencing right now, because things have been continuing to speed up and intensify for so long that you can use these energies to ascend in consciousness and move faster than ever before. It's why the light is so much brighter and the darkness is so much darker than ever before. So I had a personal example I wanted to share with you, but I'm looking at the time, and my goodness, we are running out of time. I'm going to skip my personal example. It was just that, quickly, they came to visit me recently. My mother and my father are in their 80s, and I just love them so much. I feel very blessed that they're still alive. They came to visit me for Mother's Day, and my birthday was around the same time, so we were together to celebrate. And I just found myself, I just found myself loving them so much. And I remembered that it hadn't always been that way. And it was such a beautiful visit. It was so sweet. There was so much love between us. And I realized at some point that that's all there was. There was just the love. And that I started to take stock. It's like the penny dropped. It was like, oh my God, I've been doing so much processing over so many decades that I realized that I'd cleared that pattern and there was no more bumping with them. And it hadn't always been that way, as I said. And I want to make this short or succinct anyway. But I basically saw, I'm not going to tell you all the details, but it was like I started reviewing. And I think this is the important thing. I wanted to share this just because it's a really good time for all of us to take stock. We can kind of do an inventory of where we're at with this relationship with our parents, whether they're alive or not. But we can look at, what are the things that what have we cleared? What have we healed? Where have we moved into love and tolerance with them and forgiveness? And I just saw that I had forgiven them for all the betrayals, or at least the perceived betrayals, because it was my own lens through which I was looking. Maybe all the places where I wanted something different from them but never got it. And I saw that I let go of all that long ago by just seeing them for who they are, just seeing their limitations, seeing that they're human beings, just knowing that they did their best, even though it might have been limited or I might have perceived it a certain way. I just could let it all go, and I could just focus on the gratitude for everything they did for me. And I saw how much they had taught me and how much they'd given me, how much they provided for me, how much they taught me about love. And so again, I share this with you just in case it's helpful. I'm not saying this so that you're going to think I'm something special. It's not about that. This is just to say that I know that doing the egoic clearing work makes a new relationship with our parents possible. Because for me, it wasn't always that way. I mean, I remember times where we really had struggles. And so if you're struggling with something around your parents or with your the imprints, if your parents have passed and they're just imprinted inside of you, I just wanted to share that with you in case it might give you some hope, so that you know that this is something very possible to do, and it's so incredibly empowering and fulfilling. And there's some energy happening right now where we're being invited into it, and it's there for us. We're being supported in it. Okay, lastly, before I close on that topic, I wanted to just share a releasing prayer with you that I heard from a friend recently, which I really liked. And I don't know whose prayer it is, so please forgive me. If you happen to know, you can tell me. But when you're doing your processing work around your parents, and when you're ready to offer it up to spirit and let it all go, and release the shadow and the end of the processing session, you can add into your prayer, I release my wounded parent, and I release my parental wound. So you could say, I release my wounded mother, and I release my mother wound. Or I release my wounded father, and I release my father wound. And I really like that, and it seems to work well. Okay, so looking at the time, we're going to shift gears here. I wanted to talk about one more thing before we go into our questions and sharing. But I'm just going to take a sip of water real quick. Excuse me. Okay, thank you. So I wanted to just speak a little bit about gratitude for the natural world. On Friday, it was World Bee Day, B-E-E, World Bee Day, Friday, May 20th. And I wondered if you knew that. I wonder how many people are aware of it. It's new. I just learned about it. It's been new the past few years, but I heard that it was just made official this year by the UN. So anyway, this past week when I was tuning in on the topics for the month ahead, I saw this thing about practicing gratefulness for the natural world, that was important to talk about. And then the synchronicity of discovering that it was World Bee Day on Friday, and I have this thing for bees. The bees and I are very connected, and so I thought that was a really good confirmation. So I guess I'm going to make this brief because we had some great questions and sharing this week, and I want to make sure that we get in as much as we can. But I wonder if you have any kind of devotional practice where you regularly pay some kind of respect to the natural world and give thanks for the natural world. I would imagine that most of you do. But if you don't, this is a practice that I highly, highly recommend. And if you do, I would love to hear from you about what your practice is. And I'll share mine with you. But if you want to share your practice with me, please write to me. You can reach me at courses@corelight.org. And I invite you to share with me about anything, not just this, but you can always write in questions. I love hearing from you. I love hearing from you about anything on any subject. It helps me to know what to talk about each month. So thank you to all of you who have shared. So anyway, I thought to ask you if you have a practice. I have not always had this practice, but it has felt increasingly important over the years. And I've noticed a huge difference in my life by doing it. And it's very simple. And it just includes some kind of expression of reverence and devotion, some kind of gratitude for the natural world. And it can be anything. It can be anything at all. You can get completely creative with it. It doesn't have to take a long time. Doesn't have to be elaborate. You can make it as short or as long as you like. It can just be a simple acknowledgement of our interconnectedness with the web of life. You can just give it a very simple form. Like I'll share mine with you. Every day, almost every day, I take a walk. Not long, 20 to 30 minutes. And I stop when I reach this very special place by the water here where I'm staying in Florida by the Gulf of Mexico. And there's a grove of coconut palm trees there. And I realized there's something about coconut palms that I've just always been in love with. And I could never place my finger on it, and I never really thought about it much. But, I can just look at a picture of a coconut palm tree and something in my body completely relaxes. And I wonder if that's unique to me or if you feel that too. But I've just always felt my whole body relax by seeing a coconut palm tree. And so there's some part of me that gets really excited about coconut palms. And I'm sorry, I'm crying while I talk about this. I just feel I'm becoming more and more aware of how grateful I feel for that experience of these trees. And so I just take anywhere from like 30 seconds. And if I have more time, I might take 10 minutes or so. But depending on how much time I have, I'll stop. And I just, I turn off my music or my audio book or whatever I'm listening to, and I just hug one of the trees. First, I look around and make sure nobody's watching me. Even if they are, I still do it anyway, but I try to be more subtle. And then I connect energetically with that tree, that individual tree, and I just acknowledge its life and its consciousness. And inwardly, I just say thank you. I thank the tree. I thank it for its beauty. I thank it for the calming effect that I receive from it. I thank it for the nourishment that I see that it gives the world with its coconuts and, its shade, and its bark is a house for all kinds of creatures. And, there's so much, and just the energy. Trees, I merged with a tree once, long ago in meditation. When I first learned to meditate, I was given this gift of, I didn't ask for it. I was just deep in meditation, and suddenly I was a tree. And it was so real. I can't explain it, but it was just I knew that if I opened my eyes, I would see branches and leaves instead of arms and fingers. And I just sat there in this beautiful state, and I saw that trees are enlightened beings, and that trees provide so much. And it's much more than we know, than we see with our physical eyes and that we know with our brain. It is an energy. Trees give out enlightened energy. They share their Shakti with the world. And we're just not aware of it. We don't think about it. We don't pay attention to it. We take them for granted. But they're a living being unto themselves. Each tree is alive. Each tree has its own consciousness. And it shares its love with all life. And so, I'm sorry, I lost track of what I was going to say because I wasn't going to tell you that. So anyway, I kind of like when I hug the tree and when I talk to the tree, I remember that experience. That's what I was going to say. I just remember in that moment who and what a tree is. And I hope that doesn't sound too corny, but it's very real for me. So I offer my gratitude and my devotion and respect to that one tree, and then I ask the tree to please share my love and my gratitude with the whole grove of trees and with all coconut palm trees everywhere, because I know they're all connected. They're much less bound by their bodies than we are. They're connected at other levels to the web of life, and especially to other trees. And not just that, but physically through their roots. They're all connected below the ground. So anyway, I also, I see then, I visualize that love and that gratitude and that respect rippling out to all the trees and to the rest of the natural world everywhere. So I just quickly, visualize that, and I send it out, and I ask the tree to send it out. And what happens, I've noticed that by doing that, I pay a lot more attention to the rest of the natural world, especially on the walk. And I notice all kinds of amazing things on the walk. Like, I start to see the dragonflies and the bees and the clouds and the water, and I feel the sunshine on my skin, and I see the people walking their dogs, and I talk to the dogs. I don't stop and talk to all of them, but I just talk to them as I pass inwardly. And sometimes I do get to pet the dogs, and I love that. But anyway, it's an experience of love and gratitude that expands, and it becomes like a positive feedback loop, and it just brings so much joy. And so by the end of the walk, the short little walk, I feel so high, and I feel so connected with the web of life, and I've renewed my connection with that spirit that moves in all things. And so it's a great reminder. And so I just share that with you because I feel like we're being invited into this opportunity right now to have a little practice. And like I said, it can be 30 seconds. It can be anything. You might already be doing it. You can just do it when you pet your cat or something. But if you make it a little more formal and, you make it a little longer, it will grow and it will enhance your connection to the web of life and to the spirit that moves in all things. And just imagine if enough people did that, if everybody was doing something like that, what a difference that would make in our world. How much more love would there be? All right. I'd like to move on to the questions. And forgive me, I'm just parched today, so I'm going to drink some more water. Excuse me. Pardon me. Okay, so the first question is from Michelle. Excuse me. She says, my question is regarding my fear and anger response to overturning Roe versus Wade. Is my ego in the driver's seat here? Is this the divine truth and I need to just surrender to whatever the outcome may be? We talk and we share and we debate and we march, but the tyrant feels very real to this victim. I'm a 55-year-old female, and I'm mad that younger generations don't understand what was fought for by my mother's generation. Thank you. My heart feels very closed right now. Well, first of all, Michelle, let me back up. First of all, for everybody who may be calling in from outside the U.S. and who may not be familiar with Roe versus Wade, it was the landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1973. It ruled that the U.S. Constitution protects a woman's right to have an abortion. And what happened recently was that there was some kind of leaked document from the Supreme Court offices that indicated they were planning to overturn Roe versus Wade. And as far as I know, they have not done it, but the document that was leaked indicated that they were planning to do that. And I have to confess I'm not totally up on all the news, but I do know that it has thrown a lot of people into some very strong emotional reactions. And so forgive me if I'm not up to date. I'm sorry. I haven't tracked the news as carefully as I sometimes do. But I know that was the latest as of several days ago. So anyway, Michelle, thank you so much for bringing this up. I know that it's on a lot of people's minds, and so you're not alone. I know many people, not just women, but many people who are feeling fear and anger about that news. I think our discussion earlier today about unfairness and injustice applies directly to your question, in many ways. So, the victim and the tyrant, they do feel very real in this situation, don't they? First of all, fear and anger are normal responses to something like this, So nobody needs to be beating themselves up for feeling emotional about this. I'm not going to repeat what I said earlier in the call, but just to summarize, I try to summarize a little bit. The practice in a situation like this is mainly about witnessing whatever your response is. And so that would include feeling your feelings and naming them, right? Allowing them, giving yourself permission to vent those emotions, using whatever processing techniques you like to use to transmute and clear yourself. And in this situation, I highly recommend the marriage of spirit processing techniques, like the squares or the polarities or the triangles, whatever. If you've tried those and they work for you, they're excellent for this kind of thing, as you know. And then when you feel complete with that, it's about releasing it all. It's about, releasing everything and practicing a healthy spiritual detachment. And that does not mean numbing out. Spiritual detachment is something completely different than that. It's about surrendering at a deep spiritual level and moving beyond any sense of the victim, tyrant, savior consciousness. And so, like we've discussed today, the kind of spiritual surrender that we're talking about is not just becoming a doormat, right? Not just letting people walk all over you and accepting what does not feel right to you. You need to find your way of saying no to whatever does not feel right to you. So I guess I can also add here a spiritual perspective to what I see happening with the situation. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak about it legally, but I can speak about what I see spiritually around the whole situation. And so the highest spiritual teaching that applies here is about freedom. And that includes the freedom of each person to choose what feels right for their own body. And we each have the individual right to choose what we believe is right for our body. And we incarnate on planet Earth to experience that level of freedom. And as a human collective, we've been moving in that direction for a long time, and we're going to continue to move in that direction. And even if there are setbacks from time to time, that's the direction that we're moving as a species, into freedom, more and more freedom. And so I realize that this is going to offend anybody who's listening to the call who might believe that abortion is murder and that it should be made illegal. And I apologize. I apologize to you. It's not my intention. It's never my intention to challenge anybody's religious beliefs or other beliefs. And I know that there's a whole part of this debate about when a fetus becomes a human being and at what point the pregnancy shouldn't be allowed to be aborted, if at all, and so forth. And it's not within the scope of our call to go into this too deeply, and I don't want to do that. So I just know from personal experience that sometimes a soul does not actually come in. It doesn't embody the baby's body until just before birth. And I watched that happen with the reincarnation of my grandparents. I was shown that they were reincarnating, and I was shown where and into which bodies they were reincarnating. And I watched it happen, and they came in right before the birth, just before the birth. And I've read about some instances where the soul doesn't come in and embody the baby until after the birth. So that's a whole other topic to go into another time. But all that being said, I'm just aware that almost everything happening, let's say, on the world stage these days, it's specifically designed to push us into separation. It's to make us angry, to make us afraid, to divide us from each other, and even to hate each other. So I would invite everybody, if this topic is upsetting to you and it's pushing you into any of those feelings, to just breathe. Just take some long, slow, deep breaths, and I invite everybody to come back into the witness, to remember who you are. You're not the emotions. You're pure awareness. The emotions are passing through you. So we have this, what we would call a setup, a spiritual setup. One group believes that abortion is murder, and the other group believes that it's about freedom of choice. And so it's the perfect setup for division and separation and high drama, right? So how are we going to respond? How do we respond? That's the question. It's up to each one of us. How will you respond? And I would invite everybody to remember that the path that we're on is into the fully opened heart. And that path begins, the very first step begins with tolerance. So if you practice nothing else right now, it would be to start with trying to find tolerance for the people with opposing views. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. And it doesn't mean that you have to allow them to walk all over you. You can still say no to what feels wrong to you. But it's a quantum leap on the spiritual journey to learn to say no with love. If you can say no and hold your heart open at the same time, that's an enormous step. And that's what we're practicing. That's what this is about. So I just invite everybody to remember that and to realize that that's the process we're being invited into. We're being invited into the next step of that process. Holding our hearts open while we say no. And also, I just want to mention this. I just read somewhere, I don't remember where, but I read that the plan to overturn Roe versus Wade was not about the judges taking a stand on the ethics of abortion, but rather that they were saying they wanted to give the states, each of the states, the power to make its own decision. And I don't know if that's true. I'm not saying that even if it were true that that's right or that's good to do that. All I'm saying is let's just be aware that the media is spinning this whole thing in different ways. And it appears as though it's specifically designed to make everybody divided and angry and afraid. And it depends which media you tune into. So it's a good example of the kind of manipulation that we're experiencing depending on the media. And we need to remember that when we're highly emotional, especially when we're in fear, we're much more easily manipulated and controlled. So I just add that as part of this response, Michelle, to your question. So as we all go through this process, it's really important to remember the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is that we're in a process of the feminine power rising. And this is a huge cycle. We've had 6,000 years of patriarchy, which has been about the ascendancy of the masculine or the yang principle. And we're at the end of that cycle. And so now it's changing, and we're in a time where the feminine or the yin power is rising to meet the masculine. And the new cycle that we're entering is not about the ascendancy of the feminine or the yin. It's about the balancing of masculine and feminine. So balancing masculine and feminine is essential for each of us for the opening of the heart. As individuals, we're able to open our hearts only to the degree that we've balanced masculine and feminine energies within us. And as we know, the collective is just a group of individuals, so what's true for the individual is also true for the collective. And so the collective new paradigm of the heart will be birthed only when enough of us as individuals have balanced masculine and feminine energies within us to a certain degree. And this reminds me of the story that I know many of you have heard me tell before, but it was after, bears repeating right now, it was after 9/11, and the United States government was using that opportunity as an excuse to invade Iraq. And I remember Leslie was so upset, and she had so much anger passing through her that she told me later that she yelled at her guides. She'd never done that before, but she said, I yelled at them. I screamed at them. I said, this is not okay. What is it going to do to change the world? And she told me that her guides responded to her very calmly, very succinctly, and they simply said, a lot of enlightened women. Sorry, it makes me cry when I tell that story. And so Leslie and I thought about that for a long time. And of course, I asked the question, made me wonder, well, what about the men? Is it important for men to wake up too? And, what I saw from that, what we both saw, was that the guides were not saying that it wasn't important for men to wake up. What they were saying was that because men have held the power for so many thousands of years, it's just especially important that women stand up in their feminine power now. They have to stand up to match the masculine. So it's really about the feminine power rising up. And it's also true that it is important for men to develop their feminine power and to work on balancing masculine and feminine energies within. And it's also important for men to find ways to encourage and support their sisters and their daughters and their mothers and spouses in standing up in their feminine power. And it's funny, I also remember 10 years later, it was maybe 10 years ago, somewhere around 2010, I think, that the Dalai Lama said the same thing. He said something to the effect of that it was going to be women, specifically Western women, who would make the difference and who would change the world. And then since then, I've also heard it from other teachers and channels too. So it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, doesn't it? So anyway, just to get back to your specific question, Michelle, my advice would be to summarize what I said earlier. First, to practice witnessing your emotions the best that you can. Find whatever way you need to say no. This is not right. Do whatever that looks like for you. Do the processing work that you feel you need to do. Whether it's the square on injustice that we talked about, that would be a very good one to do. Any work that you can do around the victim, tyrant, savior consciousness would be good. Excuse me. Any kind of emotional clearing work would be good. Just feeling everything you need to feel, including the fear, including the anger, whatever it is. And then when you're ready, and only when you're ready, you let it all go. And that's when you practice spiritual surrender and detachment. And that's when you do your best to open your heart and stay in love. And to take heart, just remember that you're not alone, and that we're moving as a collective. We're moving in the direction of freedom. So there's nothing wrong about what's happening. I know it looks terrible and wrong, but there's a perfection to it, as we talked about before. I mean, it's not perfect, but it is perfect in its way. And it will make us stronger. It will help us to heal. So I hope that helps. And I'm grateful for your question. Thank you for writing. Very timely. Okay, and I think this is going to have to be our last question. We're almost out of time. And this is from Ruth. Ruth says, I've mostly deflected thinking or hearing about things related to aliens and ETs, etc. Not because I'm opposed or skeptical, but likely the opposite. And it feels overwhelming. I'm allowing in a little knowing, not yet reading anything about it at all, but I don't want to plunge into this. Can you give any feedback about this? So yeah, I can, and I'm going to take a sip of water before I do. Sorry, excuse me. So there's more and more coming out about this topic, and we don't usually discuss it on these calls. We did once a long time ago, many years ago, but we haven't since then. And, a lot of what's out there is just plain nonsense and misinformation. But some of it is definitely legitimate. And there's one person who I totally trust on this subject, and his name is Dr. Stephen Greer, Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer. So if you wanted to do any research on the topic, I suggest that you check out his stuff if you're interested in it. He's considered the father of what's known as the disclosure movement. And his website is SiriusDisclosure.com. And Sirius is spelled like the star system, SIRIUS, SiriusDisclosure.com. So he's got books and he's got movies. His movies have reached many hundreds of millions of people. You can, let's see, I've written down a few here. Let me get the names of the movies. So I recommend there are four. Sirius is the first one. It was made in 2014. It's on Vimeo. Unacknowledged is another one. That's from 2017, and that's on Netflix. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and that was made in 2020, and you can find that on Amazon Prime. And the most recent one is called The Cosmic Hoax, and that was made last year. Another place where you can also do research that I recommend is on Gaia.com, Gaia.com. There's a lot of information there, and I can't vouch for any of that, but what I've seen, seems a lot more legitimate than a lot of the stuff out there. But I guess the way that I prefer to speak about the subject, instead of talking about, quote unquote, aliens and ETs, is to talk about multidimensional beings. I really can't claim to know anything about aliens and entities, but I am aware when I'm connected with multidimensional beings. And to me, it just means it's a being who lives in another dimension. And yeah, they might live on another planet, or maybe some other star system or galaxy, but not necessarily. For example, some people say that there are beings from star systems like Sirius and the Pleiades and Arcturus and many others that are here with us. And I don't claim to know where the beings are from. I understand there are many, many, many. But what I do know is that these beings resonate at such a high vibration. They're so evolved, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years more advanced than we are. We don't see them in the 3D with our human eyes. But if they choose to, they can slow down their vibratory rate and they can densify, and then they manifest as physical forms in the 3D that we can see. And so my understanding and my experience is that there are benevolent beings who do guide our planet and guide our human evolution, and they're multidimensional. I've heard them. I've heard multidimensional beings before with my physical ears, but I've never seen them with my physical eyes. But I have seen pictures of some of the multidimensional beings, because I know some people, they'll take pictures and the beings appear on camera as beings of light. I know people have experienced healings and, received messages from multidimensional beings. So they're here, they're with us. And there's the idea that some of us are connected with some of these beings. And some people say that before some of us incarnated on Earth, we lived in these other star systems. Like some people seem to know what their home star is and what race of beings they're connected to, and where they come from originally. The idea that I feel is very plausible is that we agreed to come to Earth and incarnate over and over and over in human bodies over millennia for many reasons. And there's part of our consciousness that remembers this. So at some level, we feel very connected to these multidimensional beings, because they're our friends, and they know us. They know us from when maybe we were part of their tribe or their race or whatever you want to call it. We were like living with them as one of them. And so a lot of people ask why. Why is that? Why would we choose? If that's true that we are part of them, why would we choose to do this human incarnation thing? And there are lots of reasons. And I couldn't possibly go over all of them in one call, but I'd like to touch on a few of the reasons why we might choose this experience of being human when maybe it's true that we are connected to these other multidimensional beings. So one of the reasons might be that it's for our own soul evolution, just our own personal soul evolution. It's an incredible opportunity to be here on Earth and to incarnate in these bodies and to experience the extreme density that comes with being on planet Earth and the forgetfulness. We incarnate into forgetfulness. So to really believe that we're separate individuals is a testament to the incredible reality of this illusion that's called life on Earth. The experience of separation that we have here allows us to learn these extraordinary lessons in a way that's not possible maybe other places. So like when we learn a lesson here on Earth, we really get it. We get it because it seems so real. Things are so dense here that everything seems very real because you can touch it and taste it and smell it and so forth. And in truth, it's all an illusion. And the enlightened masters throughout the ages have always told us this. But now quantum physics is proving it. But we don't get to see all of that. We don't get to see that until after we become enlightened or after we drop the body or if we're super psychic or something. And so then, like after we've dropped the body, when we've been through enough incarnations and we've woken up to who we truly are, and we can pass through the trials associated with victim tyrant savior consciousness. Essentially, we stop incarnating on the earth. That's when it's finished for us, when we master that process of victim tyrant savior consciousness. And so at that point, we might choose to go on to something else. We might start incarnating in some other universe and teach about what we learned. Anyway, let's move on. Another reason, I think we're running out of time. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through this here. So another reason is to serve. One of the most powerful experiences that a species can have is to make that shift in consciousness that humanity is making right now. And that's the shift from the third dimension into the heart. It's the shift that we talk about, the shift from the love of power to the power of love. And so apparently that's a much bigger deal than we know. So we volunteered to come here and to support an evolutionary shift in consciousness for a whole race of beings. And so it's our service. This is what we offer as our gift. And then another reason is just for the sheer excitement of it, right? I mean, to watch a whole planet wake up. What an amazing time we're in. And, we hear that beings from all over the universe, from many different star systems, they're all here to watch this show. What is it going to look like? I mean, what an amazing opportunity that we get to be here for this. We're incarnated in these human bodies. So it's really good to remember that part, that it's a celebration and it's such a blessing that we can be part of it at this 3D level in these bodies. And another reason is just to experience the sheer beauty of the earth, and her uniqueness. They say that this is one of the most beautiful planets anywhere. And it's got such an incredible diversity of life forms. So Earth is considered a destination planet. And I know that it doesn't feel like that much of the time right now. It feels like hell on earth. But that's the truth of it. So I think I'm just here to remind us all of that today. And I'm sure there are lots more reasons why we might choose to incarnate here. But let's leave it at that because we're basically out of time. And I want to get back to answering Ruth's question. The rest is kind of beyond our scope for the call today. So I'll close by saying to you, Ruth, and to anybody else who resonates with this, one of the reasons that you may not be I think you used the word enthusiastic about diving into the subject of all of this is because some part of you realizes that you already know it, right? Like, that your focus right now needs to be on just being a human, just being you, being right in the present moment, doing what you need to do right now. And if you were to start opening up all this stuff in like too big of a way, then you might get distracted. And the truth is that you're going to have plenty of time after you drop the body one day to remember all of it. So I don't know, maybe for right now, none of that's really necessary. Maybe your lessons are right in front of you as Ruth, not as your multidimensional self that's on another planet somewhere. You'll become aware of your multidimensional self again as soon as you drop the body, whenever that might be. And I think that's a really important point. Maybe it's most important for each of us just to remember that we are multidimensional beings and that at some level of our consciousness, we're aware of it. So let's just let this information sit inside. We just take what we need and we let the rest go. If any of it helps you to function in the world, if any of it helps you to feel less vulnerable when you're out in the world, in this crazy human population, if any of it helps you maybe to cope with the feelings that you might have being an alien who got dropped off and forgotten about on some strange and dangerous planet, well then, this is the part that you can take with you, is that you are a multidimensional being. And so if that resonates with you, then you know that it's true. And so let's all just let that help us through our day. Okay, well, I hope that helps, Ruth, and thank you so much for your question. And again, thank you to everybody for your questions and your sharing. I'm sorry I don't have time to get to all of them, but I love hearing from you, as I said before. So please do share or ask questions. Tell me how you are. You can reach me at courses@corelight.org. And so we're at the end of our time, and let's close with a very short prayer. I invite you to just stop whatever you're doing if you're multitasking and just sit quietly for a minute and close your eyes. Take a few long, slow, deep breaths. And just let go. Just breathe. Long, slow inhales, long, slow exhales. We stirred up a lot with our conversation today. And so just breathe in whatever resonates and is supportive for you. And just breathe out and let go of anything you don't need. And just take this moment to be with your breath. Just be in the present moment. Right here, right now. Let's put our attention in the heart chakra, right in the center of the chest. Just feel our hearts like a big, beautiful, radiant sun, right, compressed right in the center of our chest. Feel that love force radiating inside you, filling you up with love and healing energy. And feel it, visualize it, passing through your skin into your aura, filling up your aura with beautiful colored light, whatever color you choose to give it. Filling you up with this love energy. And send it out to your entire city. And then let it spread further to your entire state or province. And let it continue to radiate and spread your love out to your whole country, encompassing your whole country. And then let your love radiate, continue to spread to your whole continent. And then beyond to encompass the whole earth. So that your love light, your heart center, is radiating out through the entire earth. Sending your love to all beings, the whole web of life. So we give thanks for this time that we share together. We give thanks to the Great Spirit, to the Spirit that moves in all things. We're grateful. We thank you for the gift of love, the gift of incarnation as humans on planet Earth right now. Hold our hands. Help us remain strong, courageous. Give us strong witnesses. Support our witnessing practice. Support our ability to hold our hearts open even when we say no. Especially when we say no. There's plenty to say no about. So we're grateful for the opportunities we receive, and grateful for the beauty of this planet, for all life forms, the whole natural world. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alalaho. So thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to be with you. I'm so grateful that you are participating in this field of love and unity consciousness that we hold together. I just love being with you. The energy is so delightful. It's one of the highlights of my month. So thank you for participating, and I will look forward to seeing you again next month. So all my love for now. Bye-bye.